One day after transferring $10,000 for my parents' anniversary party, I stood frozen as my younger brother Jake smirked at me across our family dining table. It's cute how Olivia thinks she matters when all she's good for is her credit card, he announced to the room, raising his glass in mock toast. Everyone, my father, mother, aunts, uncles, erupted in laughter as if he'd delivered the punchline to a hilarious joke. My mother wiped tears from her eyes, nodding in agreement. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. 6 years of paying their mortgages, medical bills, and emergencies flashed through my mind like a grotesque slideshow. Without breaking eye contact with Jake, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. "What's wrong, honey? Can't take a little joke." My father's voice carried that familiar condescending tone he'd perfected over decades. I said nothing. My finger hovered over the cancel transaction button for a fraction of a second before I pressed it. The confirmation appeared instantly. Transaction canceled. Funds returned to your account. A strange calm washed over me. "Nothing's wrong," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "I just remembered I have somewhere to be." My mother's smile faltered. "But we haven't even cut the cake yet. You paid for it. Don't you want a piece? Keep it." I stood up, grabbing my coat from the back of my chair. Consider it my last gift. The doorbell rang, and everyone's heads turned toward the entryway. Perfect timing, my Uber had arrived. I walked straight past my car in the driveway. They'd expect me to take it. Instead, I slipped into the waiting Uber, watching my family's home shrink in the rear window as we pulled away. The driver, sensing my mood, remained silent as I fought back tears that weren't of sadness, but of something else entirely: rage, relief, or perhaps both. Back at my apartment, I moved with unexpected clarity. I grabbed my old black backpack from college, the one I'd kept as a reminder of when I had dreams before family obligations consumed me. It still had my graduation tassel attached to the zipper. I didn't need much. A few changes of clothes, my laptop, essential documents. The backpack felt startlingly light for something that contained my entire future. Then I opened my filing cabinet and began collecting every shred of evidence, every loan document with my signature that benefited my parents, bank statements showing transfers to their accounts, text messages begging for just a little help until next month. I photographed everything, created digital copies, and organized them meticulously. 6 years of financial dependence documented in one neat folder on my laptop and hard copies in my backpack. I checked my phone. 17 missed calls already. I silenced it and continued working. Finally, I put on my jacket, shouldered my backpack, and walked out. For the first time in years, I had no obligation to answer their calls, no responsibility to solve their problems. The night air felt different somehow, lighter, cleaner. I knew exactly where I would go. Not to hide, but to make my final statement. The pounding on my apartment door started at 6:45 the next morning. I'd been expecting it, had barely slept anticipating it. "Olivia, open this goddamn door right now." My father's voice boomed through the wood, followed by another series of thunderous knocks that made my coffee cup rattle on the table. I took another sip, savoring the bitter warmth before setting it down and walking calmly to the door. I didn't open it. "I know you're in there. Your car is outside. What the hell do you think you're doing?" "I'm drinking my coffee," I replied, loud enough for him to hear. "And I'd like to finish it in peace." "You little ungrateful." His words devolved into incoherent rage. "You can't just cancel the payment for our anniversary. Do you know how embarrassing that was? The caterer called this morning saying the payment was declined." My phone vibrated on the counter, a text from my mother. "We raised you better than this. After everything we've done for you. Your brother is devastated by your behavior." I almost laughed at that. Jake, devastated? The same Jake who drained my emergency savings for his startup that never materialized? The same Jake who totaled my car and never paid a dime toward repairs? My father's pounding continued. "You open this door right now, or I swear to God, or what?" I finally asked, my voice carrying through the door with a confidence I'd never felt before. You'll cut me off? Stop talking to me? Take away my allowance? I'm 31 years old, Dad. What exactly can you take from me that you haven't already? The silence that followed was brief but profound. This isn't you, Olivia, my mother's voice now, softer but no less manipulative. You're not thinking clearly. Let us in so we can talk about this as a family. We're done talking, I said. I've been talking and paying for 6 years. Now I'm listening to myself for once. I heard them murmuring to each other outside my door, probably plotting their next approach. My phone lit up with texts from relatives I hadn't heard from in months, all suddenly concerned about my mental health and strange behavior. I silenced each conversation, one by one. They waited me out. 3 hours later, when I finally had to leave for work, they were still there. My father leaning against the wall, my mother sitting on the floor scrolling through her phone. Finally, my father said, pushing himself upright. Now we can talk like adults. I have to get to work, I replied, locking my door behind me. Some of us have jobs to maintain. This is exactly the kind of disrespect I'm talking about, he said, following me down the hallway. After everything we've done for you, I stopped so abruptly that he nearly collided with me. What exactly have you done for me lately, Dad? Please enlighten me. We gave you life, my mother chimed in, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. We raised you, sacrificed for you, and in return, I've paid your mortgage for the last 3 years. I've covered Jake's legal fees, his car, his failed businesses. I've funded your vacations, your anniversary parties, your medical bills, which, by the way, you never mentioned were elective procedures, not emergencies. They looked stunned, as if they couldn't believe I'd kept track, as if they thought I'd been too naive to notice. That's what family does, my father finally said, his tone shifting to something almost reasonable. We help each other out. Interesting definition of each other, I said, continuing toward the elevator. Seems pretty one-directional from where I'm standing. My mother grabbed my arm. You can't just walk away from us. We're your parents. I looked down at her hand, then back at her face. I have a meeting in 30 minutes. Unless you plan to physically prevent me from going to the job that has been supporting all of us, I suggest you let go. She released me, tears welling in her eyes. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. This isn't over, my father called as the doors closed between us. He was right about that, at least. I should have expected they'd follow me to work. My brother texted. Heads up, Mom and Dad are coming to your office. They're pissed. Too little, too late for his warning. I looked up from my desk to see my mother creating a scene in the reception area. My father stood behind her, arms crossed, jaw set in that familiar expression of righteous indignation. I need to see my daughter immediately, she was telling the receptionist, her voice loud enough for the entire floor to hear. It's a family emergency. I signaled to the receptionist that I'd handle it and walked out to the lobby. What are you doing here? I asked, keeping my voice low. You won't answer our calls. You won't talk to us at your apartment. What choice did we have? My mother's voice, in contrast, was deliberately loud. This is my workplace, I said. Whatever you think this will accomplish, it won't. You're only embarrassing yourselves. We're embarrassing ourselves. My father stepped forward. You're the one who abandoned your family, who turned your back on people who need you. Your brother's rent is due tomorrow, and your mother's medication. Sir, the security guard approached us. I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice, or take this conversation outside. This is between me and my daughter, my father snapped. Not anymore, I said. I'm at work. I have responsibilities here to people who actually respect professional boundaries. My mother's expression shifted from anger to her backup strategy, guilt. How can you be so cold? After everything, Ms. Harris, would you like me to escort these people out? The security guard asked me. My parents looked shocked that someone would intervene on my behalf, that their authority wasn't absolute here. Yes, I said, looking directly at my parents. I would. My father's face reddened. You'll regret this, Olivia. When you need us. When have I ever needed you and actually received help? I asked. Name one time in the last decade. He had no answer as security guided them toward the exit. My coworker, Diane, approached as I returned to my desk. Are you okay? That looked intense. I took a deep breath. Family drama. Nothing new. Want to talk about it over lunch? I hesitated, then nodded. Maybe it was time to let someone else in, someone without an agenda. The texts and calls continued for days, cycling through different tactics. My mother's tearful voicemails. I don't understand what we did wrong. My father's angry demands. You need to stop this childish behavior immediately. My brother's half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. Come on, sis, you know they're just old-fashioned. Then came the flying monkeys, relatives and family friends suddenly concerned about my well-being, all carrying the same message. Your parents are worried about you. They just want to talk. I changed my locks after finding my mother in my apartment, just checking if you're okay. I set up email filters after discovering they'd created fake accounts to bypass my blocks. I warned my building manager about unauthorized visitors. Through it all, I maintained my silence. Not out of petulance, but because for the first time, I was hearing myself think without their voices drowning out my own. Diane became my unexpected ally, offering her guest room when I mentioned feeling unsafe in my apartment. Just until things calmed down, she said. No strings attached. I declined, but thanked her. Running away wasn't the solution. This apartment was mine, paid for with my money, my hard work. I wouldn't be driven from it. A week after the anniversary disaster, I received an email from my father with the subject line, "Let's talk peacefully." The message invited me to meet them at the community center where my brother's basketball league played on Saturdays. Neutral territory, he wrote. Just to clear the air. I knew it was a trap, another opportunity for them to corner me, to wear me down with their combined pressure. But I also knew it was time to end this on my terms. I replied with a single word, fine. That night, I opened my black backpack and reviewed its contents one final time. The community center was crowded with weekend basketball games and swim lessons, exactly as I'd expected. My parents wouldn't cause a scene with so many witnesses, or so they'd think. I spotted them immediately at a table near the concession stand. My father's scowl, my mother's anxious fidgeting, and unexpectedly, my brother slouched beside them, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I approached with my backpack slung over one shoulder, hyper-aware of every step. My mother saw me first, her expression brightening with hope, not for reconciliation, I realized, but for the return to normalcy, where I solved their problems without complaint. Olivia, she stood to hug me, but I remained just out of reach. We're so glad you came. My father didn't stand. Sit down. We need to talk about your behavior. My behavior, I repeated, not as a question, but as a confirmation of his audacity. Yes, your behavior, he continued. This little tantrum has gone on long enough. Your brother's landlord is threatening eviction, our anniversary was ruined, and your mother's been sick with worry. I placed my backpack on the table between us. Before we go any further, I have something to show you. My mother glanced nervously at the bag. What is this about? Evidence, I said, unzipping the backpack. 6 years of evidence. I pulled out a stack of bank statements, each transfer to their accounts highlighted in neon yellow. Next came the loan documents, 3 mortgages refinanced in my name because their credit was too poor to qualify. Credit card statements showing thousands spent on their needs while I lived on ramen to make the payments. What is this supposed to prove? My father demanded, though his voice had lost some of its conviction. That I've given you over $200,000 in the last 6 years, I said, laying out the documents methodically. Money I'll never get back. Money that should have gone toward my own future, my own home, my own life. People at nearby tables were starting to notice our conversation, glancing over with undisguised curiosity. This is ridiculous, my father said, lowering his voice. That's what family does. We support each other. Support is reciprocal, I replied. This wasn't support. This was parasitism. My brother finally spoke up. Come on, Liv, you're making a scene. Am I? I turned to him. Tell me, Jake, how's that startup going? The one I invested $30,000 in? The one that never produced a single product? He shifted uncomfortably. The market changed. It wasn't viable anymore. And yet you bought a new car the same month you told me the business had failed. Interesting coincidence. My mother reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled away. Honey, if you're having financial difficulties, you should have just said something. We would have understood, like you understood when I said I couldn't afford Dad's fishing boat, or your spa getaway, or Jake's DUI lawyer. I kept my voice steady despite the anger burning in my chest. You didn't want to understand. You wanted to take. My father's face darkened with rage. He stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. You ungrateful little. A security guard stepped closer, watching our table with concern. Careful, Dad, I said. You're making a scene. He picked up his chair and sat back down, leaning toward me with barely contained fury. What exactly do you want from us? Money? Is that it? You want us to pay you back? I almost laughed. You couldn't if you tried. But no, that's not what I want. Then what? My mother asked, genuinely bewildered. The concept that I might want something beyond transactional was foreign to her. I want you to acknowledge what you've done. I want you to understand that I'm not your personal bank anymore. I want you to know that every time you called with an emergency, I went without so you could have more. My brother snorted. Drama queen much? I turned to him with ice in my voice. Your rent is due tomorrow. Who are you planning to call for help? Because it won't be me, not anymore. The reality seemed to hit him then, the gravity of what was happening. His cocky expression faltered. You can't just abandon your family, my father said, but his tone had shifted from commanding to almost pleading. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just no longer setting myself on fire to keep you warm. I began returning the documents to my backpack. This meeting wasn't about negotiation. It was about notification. I'm done. As I zipped the backpack closed, my father's hand shot out, gripping my wrist with bruising force. You're not walking away from this. The pain was sharp, but I didn't flinch. Let go of me. Not until you listen to reason, he hissed. Security. I called, my voice carrying across the now silent concession area. This man is assaulting me. My father released me immediately, his face a mask of disbelief. Assaulting? You're my daughter. And that gives you the right to physically restrain me? I stood up, backing away from the table. This is exactly the problem. You think being family gives you the right to take whatever you want from me, my money, my time, my autonomy. It doesn't. The security guard had reached our table. Is there a problem here, ma'am? No, I said, shouldering my backpack. I was just leaving. My mother was crying now, genuine tears that once would have devastated me. Please don't do this, Olivia. We need you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but exhaustion. That's the problem, Mom. You need me, but you don't love me. Not really. You love what I can give you. I walked away then, their protests fading behind me. Outside, the autumn air felt crisp and clean, washing away the staleness of obligations too long endured. The fallout was both exactly what I expected and somehow worse. My phone became a constant stream of escalating threats and desperate pleas. My father promised legal action on what grounds he couldn't say. My mother cycled between guilt trips and health scares. My brother's landlord actually called me directly, having been given my number as a guaranteed payment contact. I blocked them all. 3 weeks passed. I changed my phone number, created new email accounts, and informed my workplace that my family was not to be given any information about me. The silence that followed was strange, both peaceful and oddly hollow, like a room after the furniture has been removed. I began to notice how much of my life had been structured around their needs. My schedule, once packed with their errands and emergencies, now had empty spaces. My budget, no longer drained by their constant demands, allowed for small luxuries I denied myself for years. The first time I bought myself a coffee without calculating how it would affect my ability to help with someone else's rent, I nearly cried in the cafe. From distant connections and occasional social media glimpses, I learned that my parents were struggling. My mother had posted tearful updates about financial hardships. My father had been suspended from his job after an angry outburst, presumably about money. My brother had moved back home, unable to maintain his apartment without my support. I felt nothing but a detached sort of interest, like watching characters in a film whose plot no longer involved me. On a cool Saturday morning, I walked through downtown Portland with no particular destination in mind. The weight I'd carried for so long. The constant anxiety about their next crisis, the guilt when I couldn't solve everything, had lifted, leaving me almost dizzy with lightness. Near Pioneer Square, a street musician played a hauntingly beautiful melody on an old violin. I stopped to listen, letting the music wash over me. When he finished the piece, I dropped a $20 bill into his open case, not out of obligation or expectation, but simply because I wanted to, because his music had brought me a moment of joy. He smiled at me, a genuine smile between strangers with no strings attached, and I found myself smiling back. Not the tight, controlled smile I'd perfected for family gatherings, but something real and spontaneous. As I continued walking, I realized I was happy, truly happy, not just temporarily distracted from unhappiness. The ghosts of my former obligations still shadowed me occasionally, old habits of checking my phone for crisis messages or mentally calculating what I could afford to give away, but they were fading with each passing day. The city around me seemed different somehow, full of possibilities rather than obligations. I passed familiar buildings and streets, but saw them with new eyes. Not as backdrops to hurried errands or stressed phone calls, but as places where I could simply exist, breathing in the crisp autumn air. I no longer needed to hide or run. I could stay right where I was, in the apartment I'd earned, in the city I'd chosen, living the life that had always been mine, but that I'd surrendered piece by piece to those who claimed to love me. The truth settled in my bones, solid and undeniable. I was free. Not because I'd escaped them physically. I'd never actually left Portland, but because I'd finally understood that their emergencies weren't mine, their failures weren't my responsibility, their needs didn't outweigh my own. I walked through the city park, watching leaves spiral down from trees preparing for winter. One landed on my shoulder, and I brushed it away with a casual gesture, the same way I now dismiss the occasional pangs of program guilt when I thought of my family struggling without my support. They would survive or they wouldn't. They would adapt or they wouldn't. For the first time in my adult life, their fate was not mine to determine. And in that distinction, that clear boundary between their lives and mine, I found a peace I hadn't known was possible. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between your own well-being and family obligations?